Hello again and welcome back to our course on Access 2013 Advanced. In this section we're going to finish off looking at the basics of VBA before we start to use it within Access. And in this section I'm going to concentrate mainly on branching and looping. Now the first thing I'm going to do is to completely change Demo 1. I'm going to take those variable assignments out, and for the message box argument I'm going to instead just type date. Now date is a standard function which gives the current system date. So if I just have message box date, let's just run that. It tells me the date is September 11th 2013. Okay. Now within VBA there are many date and time functions, and given a specific date I can ask which day of the week that date is, and the function that tells me that is weekday. Now note, when I've got weekday typed, VBA offers me a list of the two arguments that go with it. The first one is which date you want to use. I've put date, which means today's date, but I could put in a specific date. I could actually say February the 23rd 2009 or something like that if I wanted to, but I'm going to use today's date. And then for comma, which is the first day of the week. Can specify first day of the week, and the first day of the week on this occasion is going to be Monday. So I'm saying, counting Monday as day 1, what's the day today? Let's try running that. It tells me it's day 3. Well, in fact today is a Wednesday, so that's right, that's day 3. Now weekday is a function, and I mentioned a while ago that functions return values. So weekday gives me an answer, and anywhere I use weekday it will give me an answer. Let's suppose that I want to display a message depending on whether it's the weekend or not. I'm going to take away the message box command there and replace it with if. That's the basics of an if statement, and what I do with an if statement is I say if, then I test a condition, and if the condition is true I do something. So I say if weekday current date, counting Monday as the start of the week, if the weekday is greater than 5, so if you count from Monday that means if it's Saturday or Sunday, then what do? What I do is I'm going to display a message box saying it's the weekend. So this is a branching construct. This is an if, a conditional statement. If the weekday today is bigger than 5, it's the weekend. Let's try running that. Now of course nothing happens because it's not the weekend, so nothing happens. And the second part of an if statement, notice how rather than typing these in I'm doing a bit of copy and paste here and there. If the weekday is more than 5, send out a message, it's the weekend. If not, it's a working day. Let's try running that. It's a working day. That's an if statement, a conditional statement, a branching statement, and you will be using quite a few of those. Now let's look at a different sort of branching statement, and that's what's normally referred to as the case statement or the select statement. Now I'm sure you'll be using if statements a lot in your VBA, but sometimes you need something a little bit more powerful and with a few more options. In this basic form, an if statement only has 2 options. You check a condition. If it's true you do one thing, if it's false you do something else. You may want to check a condition or a value of a variable and have several different options depending on the value of that variable. Now what I'm going to do in this case, initially badly, is to show you how to set up a specific case for each day of the week, and we can use a select case statement for that. So first of all let me put the first line in. Now the first line, select case weekday date VB Monday says what you need to do is to look at the value of weekday date VB Monday. The whole of the select case statement will end like this, and in between we put the individual cases. Now all I've done at the moment is put in one case. Select case weekday. In the case it's 1, put out the message box saying it's Monday. Case else, in any other case, so with the value of weekday of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7, say it's not Monday. Let's run that. And all it will tell us at the moment is that it's not Monday. So let's try to put in some more cases. Now, as you can see, I've checked for each of the 5 days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the else case just says weekend. Let's try running that one. And of course it tells us that it is a Wednesday. Now in fact there is another VBA function called weekday name that can do this for you, but I'm really just trying to show you the flexibility of the select case statement. The select case statement can be made considerably more complex and powerful because you don't have to list individual items in each case. What I've done here is to say cases 1 to 5, I've put out the name of the day of the week, and then here I've put case is greater than or equal to 6, and I've also put in a case else statement that says if anything else happens then obviously something horrible has occurred, because if you've got a date and it's not one of the days of the week Monday to Sunday, then something is really wrong. Similarly, you could make that even more specific by, instead of saying case is greater than or equal to 6, you can say case is 6 or 7, like that. And in fact you can do betweens, inequalities, all sorts of settings for the case options there. I'm not going to go through all of those options now, but if you look up the help and if you experiment a bit with case statements, you'll find that they are very powerful indeed. Similarly, with if statements, you can have much more compound if statements. So we've seen the basic form of if, then, else, end if, but you can also have if, then, else if, and so on, and effectively build up a sort of case statement using a combination of ifs, else ifs, and an end if. So they're the basic constructs for branching within VBA. Let's take a look at looping next. Now looping is one of the main ways in which VBA can really get a lot of work done very quickly. If you need to go through all of the records in a database table and perform some sort of function on them, some sort of statistical analysis, aggregation or something, then most modern computers can do that in a fraction of a second, no matter how complex the calculations are. And normally what this involves is looping through the contents of a table, or perhaps looping through a directory, or perhaps trying a number of different cases, perhaps going through the days this year, doing calculations based on each day of the year. Now there are a few constructs for looping within VBA, and I'm going to show you a couple of them in this section, and then we'll see them in a bit more detail later on. The first one I'm going to do is probably the one that's the simplest to understand and the one that you may well use the most, and it's the for next loop. Now I'm going to use int a as a count, and I'm going to type for int a equals 1 to 5, and then I'm going to say next int a. Now what this loop does here, from for to next, it's normally referred to as a for next loop, is that the variable int a, which is the variable controlling the loop, starts at the first value 1 and goes up to the last value 5, and for each of the values from 1 to 5 it does everything within the loop, and at the moment there's nothing within the loop. When it gets to the end of the loop, when it gets to the next statement, it increments itself by 1. So it starts off with int a is 1, gets to the end, next int a, that'll be 2, does it, 3, 4, 5, gets to 5, goes through it one last time on 5, and then it exits. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this message box statement, I'm going to paste it into the loop. So there we are. What I've done is to say within the loop we're putting out a message, the count is currently, and then I'm just putting out the value of int a. So let's try running demo 2 now. The count is currently 1, currently 2, currently 3, currently 4, currently 5. That's it. That is a loop. And VBA is clever enough that it can even count backwards. For int a is 5 to 1 in steps of -1. Let's try that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, finished. Now within basic VBA, the main alternative to the for next loop is the do loop. And it works on a similar principle. The syntax is very different, and there are actually 2 versions of the do loop. So let's start with a very straightforward example. All I'm going to do is do the same as we've done here with counting down, but I'm going to do the counting down using a do loop. Now look at this structure. We're saying int a is 5. Do while int a is greater than or equal to 1. Standard inequality marker there, greater than or equal to. Message box, the count is currently int a, so that will start off at 5. Then we do arithmetic on int a. So instead of saying int a equals a number, we're saying int a equals int a minus 1. Now what VBA does here is to do a calculation on the right. Now we start out with int a equal to 5. So it does the calculation 5 minus 1, that's 4. That becomes the new value, the new assignment for int a. So it says int a becomes 4, goes loops round because int a is still more than 1, puts out the message box, count is currently 4, does the calculation again, 4 minus 1, that's 3, keeps going round, and it will continue to do that until a is no longer greater than or equal to 1. So let's try running that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's it. And the variant on that I mentioned is not do while, but do until. And in this version we say do until int a is less than 1. So start off with int a at 5, do that calculation. VBA always does the calculation on the right and assigns the value to the thing on the left. So when a is 5, 5 minus 1, 4, that's the new value of int a. Next time round int a is 4, 4 minus 1, that's 3, that's the new value of int a. Keep going until int a is less than 1. So let's try running that version. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're done. Now with the do while or the do until construct, you can actually put the condition on the loop statement instead of the do statement if you want to. So I could actually change this to loop until, and it sort of looks as though it's the same, but there's a very important fundamental difference. And the fundamental difference is that if you put it at the end, you will always go through the loop at least once, because the condition won't be checked until you get to the loop the first time round. So if a were already less than 1 in this case, you would at least go through those statements before VBA detected that the value was less than 1. Now with both the for next loop and the do while, do until statements, there are various other features of them, such as the ability to exit the loop unnaturally or prematurely or when a certain thing happens. But for now, that's it on loops, and we've covered what we're going to cover on the basics of VBA. So please join me in the next section.